Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Learning Live for Tuesday, February 7th. Yep, Tuesday, February 7th. And we have Darlene here tonight who is going to talk to us about one of the new rainbows we have in the store, Colorista Art Markers. I'm not going to give too much away. I'm just going to turn it over to Darlene and she can take it away.
Hi everyone, it's Darlene here, and it's been a long time since I've done a Learning Live, so I'm glad to be back. So let's start off. We had a lot of questions from customers that were very interested in these Colorista art markers. So there are 4 different packs, so let's start off by looking at the different colors. There is this one here called Brilliant Hues, so they're very vibrant colors. This is the soft tints, which are pastel colors. This is natural tones, so it has the greens and the browns, all the nature looking colors. And then the rich shades, so rich colors. So right now they have 4 different sets. I had to take these from the store because I already threw my boxes away, but let me show you the difference between these markers and Copics that a lot of you may have or may be using. So let's start off with a comparison. So I have one Copic marker on my left, which is a sketch one. And then this is the art marker. So in size, it's long. It's about the same length as a tri-blend. So if you're very familiar with the Spectrum Noir tri-blends, they're about the same length.
Darlene, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just bump up on the camera? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, there. Am I okay now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Let me just show you a comparison of 3 different alcohol markers so you can tell by size, because I know very hard. So maybe this way will be easier. So we have the smallest, which is a Copic sketch. Then we have the art markers by Colorista, and then the tri-blend. So tri-blends are still a tad taller. So just a little bit, I would say half an inch. And then you can tell that with the Copics, it's about, let's say, let me see how much more, it's about 1.5 inches taller. So the nice thing about these art markers is that it's 2-ended. So it's a dual marker. It has a fine tip end, so a bullet tip end, very similar to some of the older Copic markers. They used to come with a bullet tip. Now they've changed it.
Darlene,
yes.
Do you have a piece of like dark cardstock or something you could put behind? Because it was a little bit blurry. The camera was having trouble focusing.
Give me 2 seconds. Hopefully this will help. Maybe this black.
That's better.
Is it? Okay, there you go. So let's do that again. So there is this bullet tip.
Come up a bit higher. No, sorry, towards your stand.
There.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, I will get it. There you go. So it is like a bullet tip, which is really nice for coloring. There is also the brush tip, which is very famous with alcohol markers, is this brush tip. So let me see if that will focus. I have a lag on my iPad, so I'm seeing everything delayed. So this is a brush tip. Compared to the Copics, it is shorter, which I'm actually loving. So let me see side by side. Hopefully this will focus. It is a tad shorter than the Copic brush. There you go. So, and it's pretty nice. I've been liking the small brush. I use both ends. And first thing, if you do grab these, any of the sets or all 4, I do recommend to do a little swatch. It helps you see the colors a lot better. They do a little sample swatch behind the box. but I find that it doesn't give you the true colors of what the marker does. So what I do with my little swatch here, so let's take the Brilliant Hues, for example, is this one here. And if you, let me see if I can do this closer. What I did with my swatch here is I went from light to dark, and I'll show you how I did that. That way, if I'm looking, I know, well, maybe the screen shows a lot better. It shows you from lightest to darkest using that one marker. The thing with these Colorista Art Markers is that they don't have colors in the same families where you can blend. They are further apart colors. So look, if you look at the natural tones, the Brilliant Hues, like there is no multiple reds, there's no multiple oranges or yellows. You could mix from set to set, but if you're just, let's say, buying one set, it is harder to mix the colors unless you're doing like a sunset where you're using the red and the orange, or the orange and yellow, which I'll show you in a little bit. But unlike Copics, you can get 2 or 3 markers and blend them nicely together to get that light, medium, dark. Whereas with the art markers, you use one marker to achieve that look. So what I did in my swatches, I try to show you, or show myself, the light, medium, and dark. So what I did was I used a brush, went over it once. Let me get a scrap and I'll show you what I did here. Because I find the having a swatch does help when it comes to coloring with these markers. So let me grab a piece of paper. And let's use a purple. So to do my swatch, what I did was I did one layer down, making it flat. If you see, I went not by the tip of your marker, I went flat down on the side to get that nice straight look. Then my second one, I went down again, and then I did a number 3 and a number 4. The one thing I've noticed with these markers, or any alcohol markers, is I had to let it dry just a tad before I went over it again to see that gradient look. So there's my second. This one I'm going to go over it twice to get my third darkest color. And then this one I'll go over it another 3 times to get my fourth color. So then here, now you can see that gradient look of light, mid, medium, and then dark to achieve it. So using that one marker, I can achieve the light, medium, and dark shade, which is pretty cool, I find. The other thing about these markers, I found that it may not look blended at first, especially when I show you blending 2 different colors in the color wheel. It takes away you need it to sit a little bit, and then as it dries, you will see that nice blend. And I'll show you that as we go through, because it's really hard to do that. So let's pick 2 colors. So remember earlier I just said the red and orange, they're from the same color family. So this is Poppy and Satsuma, which is from this Brilliant Hues. So if you look at it, the red and orange is pretty far apart. So that's the Poppy and that's the orange. So let's do a little sunrise here. So I like using the brush. So I'm just going to go down a little bit. And then my orange. And then just overlapping and coming down. So let's do that, leave that for now. So that's the red. I went down, the orange, and then I went on top of that red. So you can see that there's some harsh marks, and we want it to blend nicely. So I'm just going to go over it a little bit more.
Sorry, Darlene, can you bump up just a little bit higher again?
Yes.
Thank you.
There. And then, oops, using the wrong end. And just going over that orange again. And yes, it looks dark, but once it softens, you'll notice that it gets lighter. So here is the 2 colors, and the middle is where I blended it. So here's one that had time to dry already. I've been playing earlier just to test things out. But here is a leaf that I did with the same colors, the orange and the red. So I did red first and then the orange, and then I went back and look how
Up
it's
higher,
softened.
please. There you go. It's this new technology that I've forced the team to use, so they're getting used to me being on the back end.
No, it's actually good. So see how it has softened over time. So this was about an hour and a half ago, and this is now. And you could tell that it's still wet, like I can still feel it. But look at that big difference. Those are the same two colors, the same techniques, and it has softened up. And same thing if you're using two other colors from the same family. So let's do another example of the orange and yellow. So I'm using the same orange from that family. So here is orange. And I'm going to do that orange yellow sunset. So here is yellow. I'm just going to go over it. So I have that orangey yellow. And then just to soften it up a little bit. This orange is dark, but so I'm just going to go lightly just to get that nice orangey yellow in the middle. And I'll just let it sit. And I'll show you on this one here, same idea. This is the orange and yellow. I let it sit for a little bit already, and you can see that it has nicely faded. This, you could tell it's still wet. So once, probably by a couple minutes, this will also lighten up a little bit.
Darlene, is it the same as Copic markers that if you get good saturation, you should see bleed through on the other side?
Yes. So with alcohol markers, if you get this on the backside, I know this frightens everyone when they're coloring. They're like, oh no, I see it on the other side. This is what you want. So taking lots of classes and learning about alcohol markers, you want it to saturate your paper. If it bleeds through like this and it gets on your countertop, so we always say cover your table with, paper or, a desk mat, because you want this to go through the paper. The more saturated your markers are, the more it is going to blend nicely together. So you really want that bleed through. Like, look at how that looks at the back. And that's actually pretty cool at the back as well. So let's say, oopsies, we take one color and we want to color. So we did this. Let me show you some coloring samples I have. So let's start with the leaves just to show you. Let me finish here. I did a little bit so I didn't have to show you too much coloring of one single thing. I can show you different varieties of ways to use this marker.
Up a little bit higher, please. Perfect.
I should put like a piece of tape here. So let's color some leaves. Let's do a red leaf. So I'm going to start at the bottom. So I stamped these with Gina K's amalgam ink. They are alcohol friendly as well as watercolor friendly. Memento is also a very good ink, just what I had on the table. So I stamped a few images. So here I am just starting to blend my red and my oranges together. And then just bringing that orange down to the red. And if I want a little bit more red peeking through, I'll just go over top. And what I've been doing was I just let it sit, go and color something else, and I come back to it and see if I need to darken any shaded areas. So let's do this one here, where this leaf, I'm going to color some yellow. I made it autumn leaves, and I'll show you ones with the green. Whoops. And I'm going to blend that nicely. So they do color nicely, either if you're using the brush or the bullet tip. The nice thing about the bullet tip is that if you had small little areas that you're scared to use the brush, they do fit nicely in those areas. So I do go back and forth. The way to know your markers and which side is brush and which side is bullet tip, the side that has art marker is your brush, and the side that has the name is your bullet tip. That's how I remembered it because I kept opening every single lid trying to remember what side. So let me sit that down. So here are samples that I did with 2 color tone, but let's say we wanted to color with a single color. And this set, I'm brilliant hues because it's purple and I have to use purple. So this set, in any of the 4 sets, this is the only purple that they have. The other color that is purpley red is cranberry, but I want my umbrella to be purple. So the way I would do this is just like any marker, you can pick a side where your sun is showing and where it's going to be dark. So for some reason, I always picture my sun being on the right-hand side. So all my left side is always dark. So I'm just putting at least 2 or 3 layers there. And then I'm going to go lightly 1 time everywhere else. So here I am using my brush marker. And I'm going to let that sit a little bit. So that you can see it a little bit darker just on that edge there, and then lightly here. You don't have to wait long because alcohol markers evaporate really, really quickly. So I'm going to go in 1 more time for that shadow. And I'm just going to go a little bit in the middle and let that set. And then if I went over it too much and I feel this is too light, then I can go 1 more layer, but I'll leave that for now and come back to it. Let's do another color here. Let's do green for the store. So this one is leaf green. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just putting a couple layers on the left side for the shadow and then doing the other side. And I'm just going to go over it 1 more time just to cast that darkness. Let me do this one here. Because this one's a little spot, I am going to go over it a couple of times to create that dark shade. But see how I used 1 marker to cast a light, a little bit of a medium, and then a dark, same as the green. It faints from light to dark. And that's just me using 1 marker, not to say that you can't use any other alcohol markers and achieve the same look. Any alcohol markers, you can use just the 1 marker and create this light, medium, dark. So I started off with Copic markers. It's what we had in store, and I was taking classes with Alexis. And I find that I bring a lot of stuff to color on the go. And I was bringing bags and bags of markers, like Copic markers, because if I wanted shading, I would bring 2 or 3 colors. To do, let's say, an image like this, I would bring a couple colors to color. And I was finding that I had to bring so much. But with this one, I carry, let me let that dry and come back. I carry this 1 Totally Tiffany bag with not only is my art markers here, but as well as the Colorista's watercolor markers. I just use that stadium stand just to help me separate it for the time being. But then I have my notebook swatch here. So what I did was, in order for me to remember, I do this for all my markers and stuff like that. I just do a swatch with the brush. I use the opposite end so I know how the colors look like when it's using the bulletproof and the names. I always keep my swatch notebook here, as well as my gradient swatch book. So this goes at the back. So when I color, I actually take these out and I put it right beside me. So you'll see me doing that when I color, but let me show you what this umbrella looks like now. See those 2 colors, and I created a shade.
Darlene?
Yes.
Couple of questions.
Okay.
First, can you show your bag again? Because I think you were a little bit off camera for that.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is my bag. 1 second before everything falls out. So this is a Totally Tiffany bag. And if I remember correctly, this is, hold on, it's at the bottom of the bag. I gotta lift it up to see which bag this is. Give me a second. This is Sarah. So Sarah's also the same bag I use to store my Spectrum Noir. So it's a nice height. There is a little bit more room, but I tried many Totally Tiffany bags at the store and none of them fit nicely. So the one thing I learned from Sherry, who told me this, is Colorista, the way they package their markers or pens is the way you want to store them. So if your markers are hanging, it's hard to see because I'm really close, but so the hang tag is here and it is hanging downwards, then you want to store these markers vertically. Whereas I believe is it the glitter metallic? It's horizontal from this collection, and you need to store those horizontally. So I like how they've stored it the way, well, they packaged it the way you should be storing it. So I found that really helpful to know how to store these markers. So this is my Sarah bag. And all those markers doesn't even hold up the whole entire bag. So I can take this on the go. I could put a Ziploc bag with lots of my coloring sheets and just take that on the go with me. So let me bring in something else to color.
Before you go on, Darlene, there was a question in the comments on YouTube.
Okay.
Cards Are My Canvas asked if these markers are similar to Tombow markers.
So with the Tombow, I think they only make one kind. It's the watercolor markers. So it's very different from the art markers. Art markers are the alcohol markers. The watercolor, Colorista has watercolor markers and they actually call it watercolor marker. They're very, very different in the ways you use them. So here my wish is that they would have done it differently. The only way you could tell them apart is their name. Art marker, watercolor marker. I wish they did this barrel a different color. Might make it easier. But with watercolor markers, you add water, it will run, like for watercoloring. Whereas the alcohol marker, if you add water, it doesn't do anything.
So we're just going to have to do a learning live on the watercolor markers,
yes,
sometime, right?
But I did have one customer come in and ask if you could use these art markers on a stamped image. So if you're very familiar with watercolor markers, you can take this on your rubber stamp, open it up and color it through and then stamp and get an imprint. Unfortunately, I did say I would try it. And I'll just, since we're on that topic, I did try it. So if you run a marker on a stamped, the actual stamp. So I used the.
Sorry, Darlene, move it up. There we go. Perfect.
There you go. So this one's using art marker. And unfortunately, when you run the alcohol marker on top of your stamp, because it evaporates so quickly, you can't get a stamp image. It's nice if you're doing no line because that's pretty nice and faint that you can still color and have a no line, but it doesn't achieve that look. Whereas I use the watercolor marker, just like a Tombow marker. I put it on top of the stamp and I can stamp with it. So unfortunately with alcohol marker, you can't do it. It just dries up too fast. The drying time is too fast for you to get that crisp image for you to color. So I just want to show the difference. So this is using their watercolor marker and that's using the art marker and coloring directly onto the stamp. So instead of using an ink pad, I use the markers to see if I can get it. And this was not a success.
Sometimes you just have to try it and see what happens.
Well, I told Diane I will try it and, announce it. Well, put in my live so then everyone knows that. But so there it is. So let me show you. The nice thing about the natural tone greens, I found that even though they are far apart in color, they still worked really nicely together. I think I love all the sets, but I think the green and browns are mostly the colors I like to color with. Well, because there's always trees or grass and you tend to use them a lot. So I grabbed some of the two browns. Oops, that's not the right brown. I need cocoa brown. So I grabbed, let me show you, fern green and grass and coffee bean and cocoa. And let me show you how this works on a tree using two browns that are not very similar and two greens that are not very similar, but how they still work together. So I'm going to take my darkest color. I won't color the whole tree, but I'll just show you a little part of the tree. So let's start down here. Oops, I'm going to use the brush. It's just faster to color. So I'm holding it down so I get a bigger coverage on the dark spot. And then I can highlight areas that I want darker. So here, a little bit of here. I'm still learning on where shadows are cast. So, but this will work. So just a little bit of dark spots. And then here is the brown. So remember, these two browns are not close, but they still work together. So I'm just going to go over that a little bit, just so there is a blend in the brown, so it's not too stark. So I just went over it halfway, and now I'm just coloring the rest. And then I'll let it sit while I color the rest. So it is a bigger coverage. So you can see there's a big difference right now, but I'll show you what I do to fix that. So just like what we did with the orange and the red, or the orange and yellow for those sunset, is you're going to go over it again to make sure that it has a nice blend, especially because these two colors are really quite different from each other. So I just went over a couple more times. So now you can see that dark, because this lighter marker, which is the cocoa, I went over a couple of times. It made it darker. Now that seam where that split was has a nicer blend. So let me bring that closer. Okay. Not my best coloring, but just to give you an idea. So you remember how that was dark? Like, let me show you again. So here's the dark, and here is the two browns. So that's what I did the shadow with, and that's what I did with the tree. But look how well that blended nicely just by going over it a couple of times. So if you go over that brown, the light one, a couple of times, because it darkens, you get that nice blend now. See? Now it's closer in color.
There we go.
Closer in color. And you have that nice tree trunk shadow. So to give you an idea, here is one that I completely did, including the leaves. So this one I did more shadow at the bottom. Same two colors, but just going it over, you wouldn't have known that you used two browns in different, because I would say one's a brown and one's a reddish brown, but they work really well together. Same as the two greens. Like if you look at grass, fern green and grass, the colors are complete opposite, but I found they worked really nicely for the leaves. So let me just do a couple leaves. So here again, just doing some dark leaves just at the bottom. And then I just go over it. And plus with leaves, they always have dark and light, but it just gives that little tiny bit of darkness to the bottom of the leaf. And this one, you can see that I'm going over it really, I guess, putting this light green right on top of the dark just to lighten it up away. But let me bring it closer.
While you're coloring, Darlene, I'm going to answer a question that was popping up in the comments.
Yeah, I can't see comments for some reason today.
Patricia asked on YouTube, are the markers refillable? These particular markers are not refillable, but they are still a really great entry-level marker because you get the whole set. So what is it, 8 markers in a box, Darlene?
Yes, correct.
For $13.99.
Yes,
so they're
point is really
very affordable. It's a great way to start practicing and just see if you even like coloring. But unfortunately, at that price point, they are not refillable.
But I find they color nicely, and it's a good grab and go. So like if my kids are going swimming or we have a trip coming up, like this is what I'll bring just to color. And then I don't have to, because right now I carry my Copics in these 5x7s, and I have 5 of them because each color family has its own and it's pretty packed. But I can't see myself carrying 5 bags with me. Whereas this one, nice and portable, and I can watercolor or do my alcohol markers and be able to do some coloring on the go. So let me show you that green. Those 2 greens. So you can tell if you go over a couple of times, you can still get that darkness, but it blends really nicely. So these paper was done with Nina paper, which is well known for using it for alcohol markers. We have this new paper line, Cougar, and this is the 80 pound, and I was playing around with it, and it colors really nicely as well. So now we have 2 different options. So this was, I stamped, this is the 80 pound Cougar, and I stamped some images, used the same markers, and nice effect. So now if you're looking for paper, we have 2 different papers to use with alcohol markers, and they color really nicely. So I can do that to show you. They glide nicely. So here is the Cougar. I'll do the same thing. And then, so paper wise, it works nicely, it colors nicely, and it's not as if the color paper changes your colors, they still look the same. So I just wanted to show you that different papers and making it work. So here for my balloons, I did the same thing because there's only one purple, there's only one bright pink. Just being able to go over one side a little bit more, you can achieve that shaded area on the balloons, and you can always add details with your jelly roll. The one thing I think Sherry should, plug into their ears is they need blacks and grays. That's the only thing that they didn't have in any of the boxes is some blacks and grays. So I couldn't color their noses and stuff like that. So that's the only thing they're missing. But other than that, it's pretty fun.
That is a great suggestion, though you could use the fine liners.
Yes, you can, and just put them. Yeah. So that's it. Is there any questions?
I think we covered all the questions. You got lots of people saying that your coloring is beautiful and they love how things turn out. And now they just have to get their hands on it and give it a try.
Oh, you should. They're quite fun. And that's all. Now I can take this on the go. And the funny thing is, my son saw me coloring and he asked me to grab him two out of the 4. So he has his set too.
That's awesome.
Because I don't want to share mine.
Cards Are My Canvas made the comment, it's sort of nice not being overwhelmed by color choice.
Yes.
And I think you've shown a really great way to be able to use a limited or a minimal color palette and still create those really great blends and shading and not getting overcomplicated. I think sometimes people get try to get too complicated, and simplifying things can be so much easier.
I totally agree. It does take that, especially with so many colors like Copics, you don't know where to start, and this is great. But let me show you one more thing that I didn't get to show, is that I did try to show you colors in the same pack. So that way, if you just got one pack and you wanted to start with that, it will blend. But let's say you got 2 and you want to see how colors match. So the way this helps you, so the thing is, if you invest in these, my first thing I would tell you to do is do a swatch like this. Because having this, I can look at colors and see what will go together. So I picked Duck Blue, which is from the Rich Colors. It's this blue here. And I picked Caribbean, which has also that bluish green. They are 2, one's brilliant hues and one's rich shades. But they were one of my favorite colors to play with because of that difference. So you could use the dark one. So here's the dark. It's called Duck Blue. And then use the lighter one. And yes, they are from two different families, but I love how these two colors blended. So let me just go over it a couple times so it will sit. And it looks like I had like an ocean. Let me bring that closer. So those are two different colors from two different sets. And look how well those two colors went together. So don't be scared to try colors. So if, let's say you like this palette, you put it on your swatch and then put those two colors down. That way you can keep track of them because they do work. Like some of the reds you can mix. I found that Poppy, which is from our Brilliant. So it is a bright red, but if you mixed it in with Cocktail Pink, it was a really nice combination as well. So I would do another swatch of just mixing colors and having it written down. So I know, like, you know, if you wanted that nice ocean blue or that strawberry red, then you knew which colors to use. So don't be afraid to mix packages, even though one says Brilliant and one says Rich or one says Natural Tones and one says Soft Tints. Some of the colors do work really nicely together. I found the greens from the different packages. Like I found leafy green from Brilliant worked really well with the grassy green, even though one's bright and one's dark. Let me show you. These are the cards I did in my lawn fawn class. And these cards I did using only art markers. And that was mixing the two different greens from two different packages. That's two different yellows from two different packages. So they do work. So don't be afraid to try. And look how bright those colors are.
So Darlene, there are 4 sets, correct?
Yes, I can show you again. I have them right here. So we have Brilliant Hues. This is all the bright ones, all the bright colors. I love them for like the beach umbrellas and stuff like that, or the beach balls. There's the Natural Tones, which has the browns and greens. So if you like coloring trees and grass, this is a perfect set. The Rich Tones, so really rich colors, but they're dark rich, so they're really, really nice. And then you have the Soft Colors, which is the Soft Pastels. Oops, sorry, which are perfect for like spring and Easter. And those so don't judge the color by the lids because they are very pretty when you actually swatch them out. So that's Soft Tints. And if I show you, and these are the Natural Tones, Brilliant Hues, and Rich Shades.
Thank you for going over that. Rosalind is asking, and she's just coming in late. And I also saw Adrian ask the same question. People would love to see the watercolor markers in action. So we will definitely add that to the calendar for another Learning Live in the future. Diane had a question about paper. Would they work the same on regular cardstock?
So the thing is, some people do use regular cardstock to color, but I find, and I don't think it's only me, it doesn't blend nicely. You need special paper that works really well with alcohol markers for it to blend, have that nice blend, so you get that like the gradient look to it. Using cardstock or textured cardstock, I feel it doesn't give you that look.
It just that the ink may just soak into the fibers a little bit too quickly. You're definitely welcome to try. You may have stuff in your stash that you don't even know what kind of paper it is. So definitely, try out a sample, do some swatching like Darlene said, and try out your different papers. But whether it's Copic or Colorista or Spectrum Noir, we do recommend either that Cougar or that Nina to help you be a bit more successful and give you a little bit more playtime with your markers.
Any more questions?
I think that might be it. If anyone else has questions after we end the live, feel free to continue to comment here on the video or email us. Let me see if I can find the email address. Do we have it saved? Got questions? Email us at info@craftersworkshop.ca. Thanks so much, Darlene. That was lots of fun.
Thank
Those
you.
are gorgeous colors, and people absolutely loved all your little critters and all your lawn fawn. And hopefully that's a great inspiration for people who maybe have been afraid of coloring to give it a try.
That was fun.
All right, everyone. Good night. We will see you tomorrow right here at 7 o'clock for What's New. And if Matt is a busy beaver tomorrow, then we will have some really great stuff to share with you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.